Sports writer and author John Feinstein joins me now. John, what's funny about this is just a few weeks ago, I think, baseball writers were talking about what a gloomy, uninteresting season it was, right?
There was nothing going on. All the races were over. The 6 divisions had been decided. The wild cards, the 2 extra teams that make it into the playoffs in each league along with the 3 division winners, looked decided. The Braves had an 8.5 game lead with only a few weeks to go. The Red Sox, who had the best record in baseball through the month of August, were 9 games ahead in the wild card race for that last spot. Everybody's saying, gee, we hope we have a good October because September's boring.
And then the other part of this night that we weren't able to get into our piece here, rain delay in one game,
right,
extra innings in other games, and all these things happening games ending within about an hour of each other, and some within minutes.
Yeah, if you believe in the baseball gods, they were certainly at work last night creating this extraordinary karmic activity within this period, because what the rain delay did was at 11:40 last night, the Atlanta Braves lost to be out of the playoffs, blowing the biggest lead a team had blown in 111 years to finish out of the playoffs.
Not that anybody keeps track.
Nobody
right?
keeps track of that. They keep track of everything in baseball, every stat. 25 minutes later, the Boston Red Sox broke that record. So it had stood for 111 years, then it stood for 25 minutes, and the Red Sox lost in Baltimore. And 3 minutes later, Evan Longoria hits the game-winning home run in Tampa. But what was more unbelievable was 3 of the 4 teams that lost last night, 2 of them were 1 out from winning the game, and one of them, the Braves, were 2 outs from winning the game, and none of them won.
One of the great mysteries of sports, and you talk about Atlanta and Boston in this case, has anyone ever figured out what happens that suddenly a team, in this case those 2 teams, doing so well, best teams in baseball among them, they can't win a game?
The answer is yes and no, Jeff. I mean, you can look at some tangible things. 2 of the Braves starting pitchers got hurt. That's a huge thing in a pennant race, to lose 2 of your key starters. The Red Sox had some key injuries also to their pitching staff. But the flip side of it is guys who have been good all of a sudden aren't good. The simple term for it is choking. You know, you start squeezing the bat a little bit harder. You start squeezing the baseball when you're pitching a little bit harder. There's an old saying in sports that sometimes you need to try easier. And it's hard to remember that when all of a sudden you weren't in a race and now you're in a desperate race. And you know if you blow it, people are going to remember it forever.
And that, you're saying that in spite of the fact that in the interviews they're always saying, oh, we're just playing, you know we got to get better, one game at a time.
Right.
Impossible,
exactly.
Huh?
Well, it's the old, the old joke about, don't think about elephants for the next 5 minutes. Don't think about the fact that you're about to become part of an historic collapse. You can't stop thinking about it.
I always said about my Red Sox that when they lose epically, right? So they manage that.
They're never boring.
Yeah.
If you go back to 1978 and the blown lead and the Bucky Dent home run in the 1-game playoff with the Yankees, 1986, when they were 1 out from winning the World Series against the Mets. By the way, when Bill Buckner made that historic error, the game was already tied. People often forget that. But then they had the epic comeback against the Yankees in 2004 to finally break the streak, and then this year.
Now, for every loser, and a lot of focus today on the losers,
there
are winners.
Yep.
And there was some excitement in, what St. Louis and what Tampa did deserved some real recognition.
Absolutely. They both played very good baseball. They didn't give up when it would have been very easy to give up given how far behind they were. They kept grinding, which is what you have to do in baseball. It's such a marathon, 162 games in the regular season. You start in April when it's cold, you play through the heat of summer, and then you come back around to October when it's cold again. There's no sport like it that way. They kept grinding. The Tampa Bay Rays in particular looked so far out of it. They'd lost key players, including Carl Crawford, who went to Boston and made the botched last play that ended the game for the Red Sox last night.
The gods of baseball at work again,
right? You bet. And they lost all these key players. They have one of the lower payrolls in baseball. Red Sox have one of the highest. And they hung in there and found a way to do it.
And now the real playoffs begin.
And now the playoffs begin. We've got 4 weeks of extraordinary baseball, but I don't know how you top last night.
All right, John Feinstein. Thanks as always.
Thanks, Jeff.